Welcome back to the Rundown. Well, it's a sport that's known all over the world, but one that's only now slowly gaining recognition in Israel, rowing. Now, despite the fact that we don't have that many lakes and rivers in this country, Israel's nabbed some of the top prizes in rowing championships across the globe, and thanks in part to one place, the Daniel Rowing Center in Tel Aviv. Culture correspondent Maya Margit with the story.
It's Israel's leading rowing facility, and it brings together hundreds of athletes, Olympic and Paralympic champions, people with disabilities, and others recovering from serious illness. The Daniel Rowing Center in Tel Aviv. Some of Israel's top rowing champions train here.
Gentle sport.
Rowing is a really gentle sport for gentlemen. It's more than a sport, it's a way of life.
When you go to competition, usually people won't come to you just because you represent a country. But when you represent Israel for good and bad, you get lots of attention.
The center is named after Daniel Amichai Marcus, a promising young rower. When he was 21 years old, just a few months before he was discharged from the IDF, Daniel went on a road trip to the southern Israeli city of Eilat with 3 of his friends.
His friend was driving, and on the way back there was a car accident, and all 4 of them were killed. So what do? You can either, I can remember thinking I'm going to jump off the balcony from my mother's flat, and then I thought, now I have another child at home, and I want to do what Daniel would have wanted.
Not all the athletes here fell into rowing naturally. Reuven, a father of 5, was injured in the West Bank city of Jenin during the Second Intifada.
13 of my comrades were killed. I was wounded by a bullet to the leg. My comrades who tried to save me were also killed. It was a very complicated situation to deal with, physically, mentally, and psychologically. Rowing gave me a reason to get up in the morning and get out of the house. It slowly went from being a hobby to becoming a career.
Since then, he's participated in the Paralympics in Beijing in 2008, London in 2012, and also in Rio in 2016. Rowing has gained an increasingly bigger following in Israel, with the country nabbing some of the world's top titles in recent years. For Linda, there's always one goal in mind: keeping Daniel's memory alive.
I'm fulfilling his legacy. He would have wanted to have something which was going out to people, which was helping everybody.
The center relies heavily on funding for many of its programs, something which Linda hopes will allow it to continue making waves.
And joining us in studio is our Meyer Margit. Maya, I think to really be impressed with that achievement, you have to understand that the Yarkon is really what we saw there, pretty much the only river in Israel.
And not that impressive of a river.
No, as rivers go, for someone who grew up near the Hudson River, it's not that impressive of a body of water.
Yeah, they had to get the river specially widened just so people could have competitions and properly train there. It wasn't a natural kind of space to work in. So it was a huge endeavor. It took them years to build the center, and it's really one of the only major centers for rowing and water sports in general in Israel. So it's a home away from home for many of these athletes, hundreds of athletes who participate.
And generally, rowing is something we really do think of, and maybe it's a stereotype that is still not relevant as a sort of upper-class sport. We think of Cambridge
sort of
versus British Cambridge versus Oxford, but here, obviously, this has to be a more popular sport.
It's something that's actually up and coming. It's not very well known in Israel, rowing. It's one of these sports that's kind of underground, but it's starting to come up and gain some kind of recognition because Israel is winning some of the top medals and some of the top championships across the world. But this place has a lot of programs, not just for athletes, for Paralympic people, for people recovering from serious injuries and illnesses like breast cancer, and they really rely on funding. So it's very important for people to keep supporting them because it's the only place like it in Israel.
So we're glad you brought us that story to remind the viewers of that. Maya Margit, thanks for bringing us that story, being here.